We are live. I think we're live. Yes, we are live. Hi everyone. Welcome to this online event. Um, this is the first online event that we do together with Airwards, and I am so delighted to present this online series of events for the future of the Stenosphere. So maybe before we move on, Richard, why don't you tell us what the concept of the Stenosphere while we let people join the event?
Definitely more than welcome to do that, and thank you for the introduction and for everyone else being here. So yeah, Airwards is a not-for-profit awards platform, essentially the Oscars for drones, and we identify and recognize positive use cases around the world, getting their stories out there and really helping the public see that drones are something that should be taken on board. They're not to be feared or anything like that. And one of the things that we've created to enable this conversation is the Stenosphere. So it's a new word for a new category and a new tranche of airspace within the troposphere that means narrow, straight. And we just thought, all these conversations that are going on discussing the future of airspace, the future of drones, then we want to be closing this gap between the kind of ground and air traffic, and bringing in, anchoring some of these stories within what we're calling the Stenosphere. So that's what we're looking forward to hearing from everyone today on, and just being able to bring some of these stories to life.
Thank you so much. I'm actually just seeing now that we are having an issue on LinkedIn event, which for some reason we are not live there, but we are live on YouTube. So for anyone, I just shared the YouTube link on the LinkedIn event. Richard, maybe you can just text everyone on the LinkedIn event that this is it will be on the YouTube, because I can't create a LinkedIn live event. I'm sorry about this. I don't know why the broadcast is having an issue. Anyways,
Yeah, I can do that.
We'll move on with YouTube, and thank you for that introduction. So basically today we're discussing whether data is a friend or a foe of the drone industry, and we have a fantastic panel joining today, which I'm very, very excited to be here with all of you in this virtual room. So we have Romeo from Auterion, we have Duncan from Visualskies, we have Margherita from GLOBHE, and Richard from Airwards. So because we know all our background and profiles, and we have all that information available on LinkedIn, before we get started and we start with some introduction of things that we know from our LinkedIns, I thought maybe we should change that a little bit and ask a different question about yourselves, just to warm up the room. So I would like to ask each of you why someone should follow you and what is the best place to follow you. So maybe, Romeo, you want to go first and tell us why someone should follow you and what is the best place to do that.
That's a good question. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Richard, for having us all on this topic. And thank you both to my co-panelists here. That's a great question. So obviously, I've been in the drone industry for quite some time, and I've had this vision of what drones will be doing in the future. And some of those we're already seeing in the first step. So I'm more of a visionary, creative type of individual. And if you look across my social media, you see different messages. Well, not different messages, but different type of content on each. So on the LinkedIn, like most of everyone, that's the professional Romeo that shares, good stories. On the Instagram, under visual aerials, you see the creative Romeo that started using drones for aerial panoramas and creative artwork over a decade ago. And then you have Twitter, and Twitter is the Romeo CH. That CH stands for Switzerland, where I was born and raised, but now live in California. And there I really focus on UAVs for good, how drones are really making an impact in society across the globe. And that's also a big reason why I'm such a supporter of Airwards, because so many amazing stories happen daily with this mobile technology that are not known to the majority of the world. And sharing those stories has a profound impact. So if you want to get a little bit of everything, good stories, feel good stories, creative stuff, and some more professional industry insight, Romeo could potentially be a place to find some of that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. We'll definitely follow you on all those platforms. Margherita, why don't you go next? Why someone should follow you, and what is the best place to do that?
Yes, for sure. So thank you again for having me on this great discussion online and for having us. I'm really glad to be here. So I'm very active mainly on LinkedIn, which is the place that I like the most between all the social media, especially for professional purposes. I think it's really well made. So if you want to follow me and follow GLOBHE, we are very active on LinkedIn. And we are always looking to expand our network of professionals in the sector of Earth observation, sustainability, and also humanitarian work, which are all my deep passions. And on there, if you want to stay up to date on news and insights about Earth observation by drones and how drones can really help to achieve a better and a more sustainable future, I suggest you follow us there under my profile and the profile of the company, GLOBHE. And I also very involved in the activity of Women Plus in Geospatial, which is a global community that I really like and is doing a great work to work for a more inclusive world, which I would invite you to follow and join. So you can also find Women Plus in Geospatial on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and you can also find me on Twitter as well.
Great, thank you so much. And actually, a note on that: this is Richard and I were trying to get a gender balanced panel, and Richard was the last edition. But we take really pride. Might not be the best word, but like I'm very delighted that you are here today with us, and I think this is very important that we all follow all these platforms. So maybe you can share the platforms after the event with all the attendees. So thank you again, Duncan. Why someone should follow you, and what is the best place to do that?
I feel fairly inadequate now because my colleagues here on the panel have really thought about what they're going to say and prepared very clever and intuitive comments on why you should follow them and where you should follow them. I will say that I'm a firm believer in open source, by which I mean there are lots of people who are very insecure about the way they do things and prefer to keep all of their technology and all of their methodologies as private, as though that's some sort of keeps them ahead of everyone else in the game. I'm completely the opposite. I believe that we should tell everyone how you do things and where you do things and what you're doing, as much as is possible under the sort of NDAs that some of us work under. So I would say follow me, because I will always give you an honest answer about what you should be doing, or what I feel you should be doing, what I'm doing, what my colleagues are doing. I have been working within sort of spatial data, for want of a better word, for too long. So I'm nearly 60, and since I was 17, I have been an archaeologist, a surveyor, working with drones, working with LiDAR, working with data capture technology for capturing and analyzing spatial data. I now feel completely at home with my colleagues at Visualskies. So we are as the name might suggest, we started out as a drone company collecting drone data, the traditional kind of video and photography from drones for a myriad of clients. But we've expanded and developed into dealing with all sorts of spatial data and not just drones as technology. Very, very keen for people to understand that drones are simply just another tool for collecting data, and There are some amazing use cases, which is why I'm happy to be involved with Airwards, because I get to see all of these incredible use cases. However, what Visualskies do is, if you want to follow and see what we're doing from a drone point of view and a spatial data point of view, I would advocate checking out Visualskies website and looking at the LinkedIn stuff that I post. If you want to see pictures of my partner's new car and what my kids are doing and all those kind of things, then there are Instagram and Twitter accounts with my name on, and occasionally they'll have cool drone things on there as well.
Amazing.
That's kind of who I am and what I do.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to check that LinkedIn and maybe the Instagram over the weekend. Richard, why someone should follow you and where should we do that?
Thank you. And yeah, I'm already making notes and following each of the panelists. So thanks for that bit of insight. But I think Airwards as a kind of industry business, making sure that we highlight the use cases, we're really trying to bring that onto LinkedIn and Twitter, I guess, as well as where we're doing it. We also have our online community that's available for winners, judges, and we're hoping to kind of open that up to a wider set of the industry. Really, we've kept it quite specific to winners and judges up until now. Why? I think I started Airwards, and one of the things and the ways I managed to convince people such as Duncan and Romeo to join the judging panel, I'd like to think it was our authenticity. We make sure that any sponsors can't just win an award, so it's not just a buy an award that we're doing. If you're judges, we put in really strict things in place that you don't get to mark your own use case, and bringing in that non-bias. We make sure that we've got at least one person from each of the continents, that we've got one person from each of the verticals, the categories that we have. So I think that would be a really strong reason, making sure that we're bringing this. It doesn't matter if you're a huge multi-million-dollar funded company or you're a 2-3 person startup in a country far away from England. We want to make sure we bring all of you on the same level, and the focus is on the use case and how you're using drones and the benefit that you're bringing, that innovative, responsible, impactful work. So yeah, I think that'd be the main reason.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard.
If I can just cut in here briefly, just not want to blow Richard's trumpet too much, but it really is worth going to the Airwards website and looking at the use cases that have been put forward, because it is astonishing what people are doing and how they're doing it, and the breadth and depth of talent and the breadth of innovation is quite incredible. And there's already pointing out that drones have gone on to a completely new level in the last few years.
I agree with that. Thank you for that remark, Duncan. So I think why someone should follow me is I've been trying for the last, I think, few years to elevate the voice of the customer, giving them a platform to share their stories, their workflows, their best practices at an industry level. And I think that follows one of my professional goals at the moment, which is to make high fidelity drone data accessible for everyone in the geospatial digital twin infrastructure spaces. So the best way to do that is on LinkedIn, and yeah, please do feel free to follow me for more of those insights. So now let's deep dive in the topic and the reason why we're here. So data, friend or foe? And I would like to start with Richard, because I think the rest of us will probably be strongly biased because we have quite a strong background in the drone space, but I think you have a very interesting, diverse background, Richard. So maybe why don't you take the floor and start? Data, friend or foe? What do you think?
Appreciate that. Appreciate you saying that an interesting, diverse background means no previous skills whatsoever. So I think, yeah, it's a really interesting one actually, and just thinking of data again from my past life running a digital agency. People would always talk about data. How do we improve it, get it, what does it help, etc. And thinking of it in the context of drones, I think it's great to have, but the application, the infrastructure, and more importantly, why and how people use data, I think should be kind of broached. So everybody thinks that data is the answer. You know, oh God, if we only get more data, our business will be fine. We'll, you know, save people's lives, etc. And I think people need to, and companies should be thinking more about what's the answer we want to solve, and how do we use data to help solve that. And I think there's some great examples in each of the panelists' companies and the work they're doing that showcases that, rather than let's just gather data for the sake of gathering data, and one day we'll figure out how to use it and how it's important. I also think from a foe side, you can get swamped with data, and the more 5G comes in and BV loss starts to be more approved, I think we risk as an industry having data overwhelm us and our customers and third parties looking to use drones. From a friend side of things, I think that quantitative data is really important in approving BV loss. You know, having civil aviation authorities able to kind of stand up around the world and say, for every million hours of drone flights, there's X number of hours of accidents, you know, helps give that public perception that drones are not just falling out of the sky, they're not crashing into buildings, and they're not doing things like that. So yeah, those from my side are good.
I think you touched a few points that are really good, and I think Romeo, you mentioned something about connectivity and the infrastructure being one of the steps to kind of like to get us where you think, you know, we should be in terms of the drone industry, the data in the drone industry. So why? Tell us a bit more about what you think. Is it friend or foe, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reality is that 100% of drone flights are about data. And I say 100% because it's not just about gathering the data, but which we do in surveys and inspection and even search and rescue applications. We're looking for data points, but even cargo delivery, where it is around delivering a good from point A to point B, data is needed there as well. And so every single drone flight is around data. So how can we get that data to the places where they need to go, where they need to be seen, where they need to be processed? And that's only possible through connectivity. And if we look back in time, if we look at the first personal computers that, you know, in the 1980s, early 1990s got to not only individuals, but businesses, they were mostly standalone pieces. And then we started to connect them internally. So you could send a message from employee 1 on the first floor to employee 5 on the 5th floor. And that was revolutionary. I remember when we did that, it was the coolest thing. And then we started to connect computers to the internet. And boy, did that really show the power of these computer systems. Then we did something similar in the phone industry, where we had these connected lines. In fact, in the very early days, you had a switchboard, somebody that had to switch those physical switches from one line to another. And then that got automated. And then we started to cut off those lines and we started to use these mobile devices. So clearly connectivity is the key piece also in mobile robotics to enable future even bigger ROIs than we're seeing today. And without that piece, without that standardization, and I like what Duncan said, the open source, make it so that an entire community can contribute not only to the software piece, but through open standards to the hardware pieces and connect all of that. Boy, then you have a tremendously powerful solution. But with that comes also one challenge, and that is the amount of data. We're going to talk about that later on.
No, and exactly, like, why, let's start talking about that, because why aren't we there yet? Why is it that we are not there yet? You're making that analogy with computers, and I think you mentioned before we should be there already. What are the different challenges, or what are the different aspects? And I'm inviting all of you guys to and girls to jump into this question, but why aren't we? What are the different elements that we need to do as a community, as a industry, to make that happen?
But
Someone.
I think. I mean, it's a deliberately provocative statement, friend or foe, of course, and the drone industry, if you can call it an industry, because it's so wide-ranging, it covers so many different areas, is a microcosm of the problems that we face with all data, not just drone data, and that is who has it, who owns it, who stores it, and who shares it. You know, we need to make sure that the right information is widely available and that everyone can learn from and utilize and implement progress through analyzing and using that data. But at the same time, of course, we also have to be mindful that quite a lot of data is not for public consumption, and this is again one of the massive problems that we face within sectors that I work in, with colleagues that I work in, is that we all have to be working on data, and COVID has shown that doesn't necessarily mean you're all in the same office. So we're having to work on data, but at the same time, no one else is allowed to is allowed to access that data. So we have to have kind of connectivity, but at the same time, security, and that is a really difficult juggling act. But it isn't unique to droning. It's the data the world over.
Do you think there's something? Sorry, Romeo, I can see your mouth opening to answer. Is there something to be said then around the altruistic side, that we need a layer of something, like what GLOBHE's doing, for example, of crowd droning, and bringing that in and saying, look, here's a layer that everyone can access, that we all contribute. Companies like Visualskies or Auterion contribute towards that in some way, and then each company has their data that they own specifically for projects. Is that maybe a solution?
Maybe sorry, Margherita, can you actually jump on that and maybe briefly explain what crowd droning is for those who are not familiar with it?
Of course. So at GLOBHE, we have a data as a service platform that gather the best drone pilots in the world in just one place. So we want to really democratize drone data. So every pilot has the right to go to the field, fly their drones, and get paid for the data they collect. So the data acquired can help businesses, organizations, and researchers really to understand the world we live in and to take action. So that's something that we find really important, and it has several benefits, both for clients and for the pilots themselves. The pilots can work locally and get paid while gaining more some flight experiences on the field, and they can learn about new applications, tools, and technique, while we take care of all the administrative part, and we can take care of the contact with clients to find application for pilots all around the world. So that's the basic of crowd droning. But if you are interested, go check globhe.com, and there you can find more information, or you can contact me after the live.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very good example of what Duncan was highlighting. And I like how you call it a microcosmos, because I think you're right. I think it's not only about data in terms of mapping data, or I think Romeo, you mentioned this earlier. It's all about data. Even a drone delivery company needs that data, to make stats like how many accidents or how many flying hours or how many the relevance of data is never been, I guess, I'm not sure this is a very strong statement, but it's never been as necessary as today. But from my perspective, one of the issues that I see on the end customer side is that, and I think you, Richard, touched on this, there's an overwhelming amount of data being generated today, and technology is advancing in a way that is enabling to acquire more data and better quality data much quicker than before. But is the end customer really, first of all, ready to consume all that data, to leverage all that data, to really share and, basically use it at its best? I don't think that is the case today. And I'm not sure where are the different, obviously connectivity, and I think we all touched on this, but what are the different other elements that is still happening today? I don't know, Romeo, you seem like to have a...
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic, and I'm curious what Duncan's point is on this. But when we look at specifically drone data, the majority of data that is being collected is of no use. And I'm going to clarify this a little bit. Let's do two different scenarios. Let's look at search and rescue, where we're flying with a drone over an area, and we know that the person missing had a red jacket on. And we're looking now for a red jacket. And if you take an image of an area, 80 to 90% of that data has no value to you, and yet you still have to consume it. Now, if you do a mapping mission and you're doing an orthomosaic map, and Duncan is the big specialist in all of this, of course, you have 100% of that image that you need so you can stitch those images properly together. But once you have the end product, you're once again looking at a certain specific piece. And about 80 to 90% of that data that you're now having may not be of use to you. So how can we get only those 10 to 20% of actionable data? And one of the ways is on edge, on board processing, meaning you have computing power on board that runs algorithm, that runs AI, that helps you pick out on the pieces of data that are valuable to you in the back office. And that is where we're heading and where we are already. And that's, to me, the exciting piece, because suddenly we have this waterfall of data that comes, but at the bottom, only the few droplets that we really need are coming out of.
Are you suggesting that we don't keep the rest of the water at all and abandon it, even though your few droplets are the kind of the key part for the job at the time, or are you saying that with advances in AI and technology and storage, that all of it is useful and will be useful further down the line?
I think that's a great question. I think you can never just not use all the data, but that data could go on, another area where you don't need
other
it
areas. Yeah, I think it should be like, I think the drone itself is becoming already a commodity. Like, if it is the service and the data that will become, like data service. Like, if you need a map of something, you don't really care whether you use a drone or a LiDAR or like whatever is. I think you were saying this, Duncan. At the end of the day, drones are only a different means of acquiring that data.
I have very strong views on this, actually, in that you don't, at the risk of repeating something you all know, you don't ask a plumber if he's got a spanner or a hammer. You just accept that a plumber knows how to fix or has the appropriate tools, and people ask us for a solution to data capture and storage and presentation problems. They don't ask us to fly an M300. No one says that. Okay, so you're being asked to provide a solution, and that solution could be a combination of any technologies and any methodologies. So I think that's very important. So we shouldn't get too hung up on the platform that we're using to collect this data. However, one thing I wanted to say, and to Romeo, is that there are times when we collect data that is for a private client. It's for a client and it's private. However, going back to my point about open source and everything else, the lessons we learn on how to collect that data or how to transfer that data or how to share that data, that connectivity, all of those things can be shared, can be put out there into the wider community, so that lessons are still being learned, even if the specific building or film set or whatever it is that we've been doing, for whatever reason, can't be given to the world. How we did it, the lessons we learned during that collection and presentation and analysis, all of that can be given out to the wider community. And I think that's something that is not massively prevalent yet and really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of the issues that I have experienced from the commercial side is we don't have enough user stories, use cases, because they don't want to, like the biggest customers don't want to share any of their data. And it's a massive issue, not only from, you were saying like intellectual property, but also like, why don't we let, the wider community to actually leverage on that data? And actually, Matt was made quite an interesting question here. 96% of all data goes unused. A stat from engineering and construction. Does this suggest we collect too much data and we aren't great at sharing data? I love this question. Someone want to jump on this? Richard, you were smiling?
No,
Richard always smiles.
It always smiles. That's it. No, I like it because I think it's got what I was saying at the beginning. What are people finding out that answer, and what do people want data to solve? And then I think using drones as a tool to gather something in particular is going to make an end project, make a use project a lot more applicable, a lot more efficient, get better results than just harvesting absolutely everything. And like I said, it does take me back to the days of building databases for a software company that I co-ran, and clients would just say, I want to be able to track everything, when a user clicks and does this and does that. And we just said, well, hang on, it's going to take us X long to build it, and what's the relevance of it, and are we ever going to use this? And I think that same theory applies here, that if we're not using, if Matt, there is 96% of that going unused, then what is being collected? Why is it being collected? And I'm always reminded of Romeo's death of the SD card. And if you allow people that pause, I guess, and you just have drones able to stream terabytes of data through to systems, is it going to enable customers almost a lax or make it too easy for them just to collect everything and then not do anything with it? Is a question in my head, but I'm also reminded of stats that I'm going to get completely wrong, but we create, or we generate as a species, more data every hour than in like the history of mankind, or every day more than the history of mankind, or something crazy like that. So yeah, that's definitely a faux side of the argument, I think.
But I also think the things that GLOBHE is doing and are doing is of so important, and we don't even realize yet today of the type of importance. And I say that because during the Santa Rosa wildfire in 2017 here in California, we went out there and we started mapping the destructed areas for one purpose only. And we made that data available to the community. And what happened was we started to see that this data is being used by a whole bunch of other people and stakeholders that we did not even think about. And that goes into what Matt is saying. If we just hoard the data to ourselves and keep it really tight, we're losing out on so many other opportunities. So from that data set that we collected, insurances were able to use the data to speed up processes. City planning was able to help with removal of debris and then rebuild process. Researchers were using the data to look how wildfires are spreading through a community. And suddenly, that one piece of data became helpful to so many other stakeholders. And we're not doing that enough.
And is it that we're not doing that enough because, and I see a few things we've discussed so far, but one of them is connectivity. Do we have the infrastructure to share that data in a seamless, friction-free platform/workflow? Is the community, are communities already aware that this data is, first of all, is sharing that data implying any sort of privacy, intellectual property, all of that, which I'm absolutely, I can't even comprehend. Like, for me, it would be like, share the data with as many people as you want. But obviously, with what is happening in the world, you can also see that if you share the data and you put that data in the wrong hands, it could be, used for purposes that are, completely against our our values. The other element would be also the communities, our communities, because I'm still getting, like, even from friends of mine, like, oh, you work in the drone industry. They don't know what drones are for. Like, they always assume that drones are still a weapon, versus like all these amazing stories and cases that we are proactively doing in different industries. So why are we still, like, how can we help in all of these aspects as professionals? And from our companies, how do we, I don't know, ease the pain of, like, sharing the data, accessing the data? How do we do this? What are the different steps and elements we need to be tackling?
Years ago, we've been through this growth period in a number of different technologies, and the simple answer is evangelism, at the risk of sounding religious, in that we have to educate people to, we know that there are planes that fly search and rescue missions, and we know that there are planes that drop bombs on countries, and no one would argue that planes are a bad thing. But we recognize that transporting materials is an important thing, and we need to get to the same stage with drones. People need to understand that the use case and the drones for good, to use Richard's well-worn phrase, but drones for good it's the way that the future will be. And I think what we need to look at are the reasons why too many people think that drones and drone data is foe, and how we can get them to understand that it's friend. And this is a question I'd like to ask, Romeo and Margherita, is what are the blockers that are stopping us changing people's minds about things? Is it money? Is it that we don't talk to people? Is it that it's still a relatively infancy as an industry?
That's a very good question.
Open to suggestions how we change the foe element into friend.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. If I can intervene on this, I totally agree on the need of more education for people on how drone data can be used, but also how is their full potential. What are the applications? Also, as Richard was saying, it's really important to shift this perspective. Sorry. This perspective of the public towards the drone data, and this is a complicated process. I think it's a complicated process because it's a relatively new technology, and because traditionally drones are really linked to, not really good. Probably not a good application, not the drones for good, but we need to shift this. And how to shift this, I think it starts with education. So probably from school, university, but also with as we were saying at the beginning, with the social network, with the highlighting good stories, and really leverage on storytelling to showcase good application of drones. That is what we are doing also at GLOBHE, and we're trying to improve a bit our storytelling power, to highlight really the good way to use drones. But for sure, I think it's a slow process, and it will be a slow process.
There is a podcast called The Vertical Space. I don't know if you guys know, but it's worth to have a look at. And there is an interview to Bobby Healy, who is the CEO and founder of Mana Drones, which are operating and delivering coffee and food already in Ireland. And one of the things he's asked in the interview is about the engagement with communities and this about the fear of technology from communities. And he says that he did, or his company, or there's a couple of surveys where people have shared their concerns about technology. And I read in order of priority: the first one is noise, the second one is privacy, third one is job loss, fourth is safety, and then there is a fifth or sixth. I think wildlife was also in there. But I was shocked, like when he says this, like the noise is the first concern from people, like from communities. It's like, so then privacy is not your main priority, so damage safety is not your main priority, is noise really? Like, it's like, so
they've obviously never been around my kids, who make a lot more noise than a drone does. So yeah, it seems bizarre that noise is top of the list.
But if you think about it, it makes sense as well. Like if you have like an ambulance passing, I think Richard, you mentioned this the other day. You have an ambulance, at 5 a.m, waking you up. It's like that is an ambulance and it's passing by and blah blah blah. But if it's an element that you are not familiar with, or maybe you have the wrong idea of their main purpose or goal. The noise is waking you up, or it's just bothering you, or it's bothering your. So I don't know. It's just kind of like it sounds a bit. We still have a very long way to go when it comes to education.
I think Romeo and I, as having been judges on Airwards, this is going to sound a little bit like an advert again for Richard, but again, I would advocate people go and look at the Airwards list of the people who tried to, who applied, put themselves forward for awards, because the breadth of the use cases is so extraordinary that it would dispel any doubts people had about the efficacy of using drones and the sense of using drones. It's kind of, like your comment about the ambulance, it will become in the near future the situation where we hear a drone noise, but they'll get quieter and quieter, and we'll accept it in the same way that we understand that police cars have to make a noise and ambulances have to make a noise. It won't become something that's an irritant or anything else. And education is completely the way forward. If I can give you a little case study, my colleague Joe and I are undertaking some work in the jungles of Mexico in the next few weeks, and we've been there previously doing some test work and looking at the data that we're going to be capturing for the client. And the village we're staying in is an indigenous village which has hardly any contact with the outside world at all, and they were completely fascinated by the drones. But they were not only fascinated by the drones we were flying, they obviously understood all of the concepts about it, how it worked, why it was working in the way it did, looking at this very closely when we were using the controls. So when we go back, we're taking a load of drones to give the village for free, so that they can, try them out and see how it works and see the benefits that they can reap from it.
Yeah.
That kind of education is, I think, a really important part of what we all need to do.
It is indeed. Romeo, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think these whole concerns are also very regionalized. Like the noise concern, that was very much European driven. In fact, a couple 3 years ago, there were discussions on a regulatory level to set standards for drone noise. That was never an issue in other parts of the world, and it's really fascinating. Auterion has just started a research study on this consumer sentiment of drone delivery. And I'm not going to give too much information, but there was one thing that came up that was very fascinating to me. People were asked, what are your main concerns around drone delivery? And the concerns that were brought up are not any different than any other delivery. Meaning, number one concern was, what if it gets delivered to the wrong place? Okay. What if somebody steals the package of my porch? And the third one was, what if there's a delay? These are the exact same issues we have with any sort of delivery. So it's not specific to drone delivery, which can be taken either as a good way, that people are starting to think of a drone as a regular, everyday, mechanism, or that they don't even think about that the real concern should be something else, like What if the drone collides with a helicopter? That would be a real drone delivery concern. None of the others are specific to drone delivery. So it's really fascinating to start to analyze what are people's concern around drones and mobile robotics.
Romeo, do you think as well on that, are you seeing that there, and this might be very controversial, but we're putting the opinion too much into the general public? You know, if you think back before the iPhone came out, if there'd been a lot of work around, hey, do you mind if Google tracks you and Apple tracks you and we gather all this data on you to do X, Y, Z, people would have been up in arms. Whereas actually saying to people, hey, we can make your shopping experience better and we can make your login to platforms better. They're doing that through data and through analytics. And I don't know, with what you've just seen at Auterion, I feel like this question of what's the public's concern is put too forward. Whereas if you engage with companies and authorities and emergency services and not-for-profits, etc., and took more of that data to make sure that what we were doing as an industry was safe and responsible, etc., then took it to the public and said, hey, drone delivery is happening and we can improve this and we can improve that. Oh, and by the way, here's the data to back it up. Yeah, like I said, it might be because it's kind of flipping it around, but I wonder if we're asking people what their opinions are and there's too many cooks kind of involved in the conversation.
That's probably very true, but you do want to get both sides. I think that's also the interesting part about data, and you kind of just mentioned it. We can take the same piece of data and sell it two different ways. And that makes it kind of like the friend or foe type of piece. And that to me is very fascinating. But I think for us as an industry to really move forward, to not only help educate the wider market or communities, we also need to standardize the industry. And again, if we look back in time on other technologies, that had to happen as well in order for it to become acceptable.
It's kind of moving the discussion towards kind of there was one of the questions posted by one of the viewers about legitimate data and legitimizing data, and how do we know that we're getting the right data and that it's real and true and scientifically verifiable. We're moving on to a discussion around who is able to provide the data, and I'm all for making sure that people are insured and trained and registered and affiliated, and that there are organizations like GLOBHE that are overseeing all of those pilots and making sure that the ones that are put forward for jobs tick all the right boxes, and that's again really us catching up with, in many ways, other areas of data capture and presentation, in that you would hopefully always go for people who are either qualified or experienced or associated, affiliated to professional organizations. And I think we need to make sure that the drone industry, massive as it is and wide-ranging as it is, adheres to those standards. We need to make sure that we can trust what is collected and presented.
Yeah, for the benefit of the wider community, I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Yeah, you've raised your hand.
Did I raise my hand just to very quickly get? I'm really intrigued to get kind of everyone's opinion, yours as well, Alicia, on taking that, Duncan, and taking a couple of the other things that we've all said. Is there something, maybe just collating this whole data, is it a friend or a foe, actually not being as binary and black and white as that, and maybe saying if you fly a drone, there should be an element of sharing some information, desensitizing it, anonymizing it into kind of a large pool, a large system, so that the entire community, other end users benefit. There is this layer, and then having it for your own needs. Do you think is that even achievable? Is it possible? It's a new industry, so to me, anything's possible if something's set up. But yeah, what are all your thoughts on doing something like that?
Margherita, you want to go first? Oh.
Well,
Go
yes,
first.
if I can, yes. So
Sure.
what you're saying is really interesting. So you're saying let's acquire data and share it with people, but maybe in an anonymous way. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think Romeo's comment earlier made a lot more sense. You know, actually, it's good gathering data because we don't know what it might be used for. So I guess if you gather it and say you're gathering it for a client or for your own use, you have to, on a level, anonymize it to be able to share it. And I'm not sure what that could look like, but it could be time of flight, or did it have an error, or what was the weather like during that flight or something, so that the community can get the benefit from it.
Yeah, that could be an idea. I don't know how possible it could be on a technical level, but for sure I can link something that we are doing at GLOBHE. And what we are doing is really working on a dashboard where you can really access drone data already captured by other people on the field, and you can acquire them, you can have them. So to really democratize this type of data, you can access them, and we wanna have a large database. So we are working on that. But on the anonymization, I don't really know how it's possible to achieve. Maybe my colleague panelist can contribute a bit better on this.
I think that I share that vision quite strongly, Richard. Like, I think that is where the future, or at least a future that I would like to see, not very far away, is the data is going to be is the service that consumers and professionals are going to be requesting, and it doesn't matter whether that comes from a drone or a helicopter or a laser scan. Like, it's at the end of the day. If a company needs a 3D map of specific bridge, that's where you go into a platform or a cloud and request that service. If you want your, I don't know, like a sports event being recorded, same story. So it's kind of like that, the data as a service versus the actual drone or equipment, that is the key element of the service, if that makes sense. I think we do have the technology to possibly do most of the workflow already, but like, I don't think the infrastructure or the communities are ready to have that yet, if that makes sense. That would be my 2 cents, I think.
Well,
I think go on, Romeo, you go.
If you look at Google Earth, it already exists. That's one example where it's there. So it's not like we're trying to do something that has never been done before.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
I think the blockers could be perceived to be technological, could be perceived to be financial, could be perceived to be geopolitical, even actually. At the moment, I know for a fact that all of our GPS systems, or GNSS as it's called now, Global Navigation Systems, based on satellites, that the Russian system is no longer contributing to that, because for obvious reasons, without at the risk of going down political lines. So that there are geopolitical reasons for some decisions and everything else, but most of all, it is down to the mindset of people within businesses. There's too much of a silo mentality in the development of technology, in hoarding data close to your chest, and I think that's the change needs to, going to sound like a holistic shaman, but the change actually needs to come from within people, within the community. And again, I go back to my open source kind of comment earlier, where you need to be not afraid to share how things are done and the lessons that we've learned, even if we can't necessarily, give everyone the three-dimensional data of the Houses of Parliament or whatever, things that we get asked to do as a client, the clients ask us to do as a service provider. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about lessons and methodologies and just good governance, being a good colleague to everyone within the community, not just within our own business.
I think that was a really good point, Duncan, that I actually share with you. I think we've been for a long time in the drone industry trying to show the shining aspect of it, meaning it was like, it was kind of like we spent so many years proving that this technology works. And I think we've wasted, a precious time and, in doing that versus, okay, how can we do more? And it's not only about the drones, but how can we do more for communities, for the bigger picture? So I think it's about time to shift that, and also allow other, parties to come into the picture. It's no longer, you were saying before, it's no longer about the drone. I think the drone will become part of our infrastructure, day-to-day infrastructure eventually. So it's the changes in all of us. That's I like that. I'm gonna take that.
Some of us need to change more than others, and I'll put myself at the front.
Definitely.
I'll put myself at the front of the queue for that.
I'll go with you.
I also I just noticed a few of the comments, and I know we're running close to time, but I hadn't put enough emphasis, I think, on the difference that data and how you can perceive it matters depending on countries, location, urban, rural, so I think there's, again, like I say, it's a deliberately provocative title that has a lot of different routes, but just sharing that I don't think placed enough emphasis in my head on, I had never thought that what's going on in Malawi, it's completely different ramifications, relevances. The data they need is completely different to Glasgow and completely different to LA and etc. So which is awful for me, because that's the point of Airwards.
If you're putting up a drone in the Cairngorms looking for a lost climber, it's a search and rescue mission and everyone's applauding you. If you put up the same drone at the same altitude on a Greek island when you're there for work on a film, then everyone comes running out of their houses and says, "You're spying on my wife" by the swimming pool. It's the same technology, same altitude, same data collection in a way, but
that might be
completely different perceptions.
That might be a really good topic for one of our next online events, geopolitics in the drone space. Richard, I think that would be a really interesting one. Any last thought? We're about to reach an hour live, so let's maybe go around the table. If you want to share any last thoughts or any last comments, or maybe you want to share what excites you the most about the time we're living in the drone related to data. So maybe Richard, do you want to go first?
I'm going to default mine over to Romeo, if that's all right. I'm super keen on hearing his opinion. So Romeo, over to you.
Well, I think we're a good decade into this industry, and we're starting to mature. That's about the right amount of time for any technology. And where we are today, it is very exciting. We still have lots to tackle, not only on the regulatory environment, but still getting community buy-in on this technology still needs to continue to happen. But one thing that we have really realized as an industry is it has to be standardized. It has to be based on open source and a true ecosystem that allows then for true utilization of the technology as well as the data. So I think we are in a very good position, but there's still lots of work to be done.
Thank you. I agree with that. Next in line, sorry, I'm looking at my screen, so maybe Margherita, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So being a drone pilot myself and working in the drone industry, what really excites me, what is really exciting is really the endless opportunities of these new technologies that can offer really endless amount of applications. And it can be also a quite artistic process to find new application for drones and for drones for good, especially. So, and looking at positive examples of drones using for good is what I really like about also my job and our job, I would say. So thank you again also for the award for the Airwards that we won for the category medical and health care sector. We are really proud of that. But yeah, I guess what excites me most is really this drone for goods movement, which I think is just started. So I hope for the best in the future.
Great, thank you so much. That was very inspiring. Duncan, how about you?
I see we're running out of time, so I'll keep it to 40 minutes, my summing up. I'd like to just pick up on Romeo's comment about regulation in a way. I think that people need to understand that having qualified and trained and good best practice, which is something that I'm frankly obsessed with, doing things properly in the right way. That shouldn't be an exclusive thing. That shouldn't mean that the drone industry is some sort of elite organization where where only people with money and training and time and everything else can be part of. I think it should open up all of those opportunities, and as long as people understand that we need to do these things safely, there shouldn't be a closed door to anyone. And some of the most inspiring things that Romeo and I had to look at during the judging was some incredible kind of educational processes in countries like South Africa, where young kids were being given access to training, access to drones, and being found jobs within the industry. And so, it's not a financial. It doesn't have to be a financial thing. It doesn't have to be a, oh my God, DJI could cost a fortune kind of stuff. It's understanding that there's a place for everyone in the industry, and that we should welcome people from all over the world with open arms, frankly.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. Richard, you wanna?
No, I was just going to say, great thing to end on. I want to. No, I think where I would like to see the industry go is more use cases. Just continuing seeing this proliferation of drones used as a tool. I do definitely think they are just a tool, and to be able to see more and more amazing, impactful, innovative uses of them that are changing different areas of life. So yeah, seeing that with Airwards is fantastic, and also bringing that technology to end users to be able to help them with their companies, I think is fantastic.
Amazing. And massive thank you for Airwards and the platform to get us all here discussing this topic. I think it's been really interesting. We've got really good feedback from everyone who joined us live. Again, apologies for the technical issues with the LinkedIn Live, and we will follow up on all the questions and comments, so we'll reach out to you individually. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much, Margherita, Richard, Duncan, Romeo. This was a very interesting and very fascinating debate, and thank you everyone for joining live. We will be sharing the recording on the LinkedIn event and the different platforms, so you can share with your colleagues and share with the wider world, so we can spread the word, the good word about drones. So yeah, I'll see you very soon in the next online event, and stay tuned for Airwards updates and whatever is next.
More of the judging and more winners. Fantastic.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Alicia.
Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for organising it. Take care, guys.
Thank you.